Multiple sclerosis messes with our sleep, and it turns out we really need sleep to help our brains and bodies to be healthy. You recently told me that you wanted to focus on lifestyle changes in 2025, so I'm doing a series of videos on just that. I'll put the others in the series above and below so you can check them out. I've taken a 4-pillar approach to living well with my MS for almost 2 decades now. I eat the most nutritious foods I can find. I exercise regularly, try to get good sleep, and practice kindness through compassion and mindfulness. Today, we're going to focus on sleep, why it's important to our bodies and our brains. I'll share what the research says, my experience with sleep, and tips to help you get a better night's sleep. I'll also create a free download with these tips. MS messes with our sleep big time. I recently read a review and meta-analysis on MS and sleep, and they report that more than 50% of persons with MS reporting disruptions or dissatisfaction with sleep, and sleep disorders are more prevalent in persons with MS compared to the general population. Is anyone surprised by this? Yeah, me neither. The sleep disturbances that we experience lead to more MS fatigue, which is one of the leading reasons that people with MS leave the workforce, and it's associated with a poor quality of life. This review says fatigue affects up to 90% of persons with MS and is characterized by subjective feelings of unrelenting exhaustion, lassitude, or tiredness. Unrelenting exhaustion, lassitude, and tiredness. Yup, that's a great way to describe it. How would you describe your fatigue? Let me know in the comments below. The review went on to say that there are 10 sleep variables that contribute to our MS fatigue: sleep disordered breathing, daytime sleepiness, sleep quality, insomnia, number of awakenings, restless legs, sleep efficiency, sleep latency, sleep duration, and waking after sleep onset. Of these 10, insomnia, poor sleep quality, restless leg syndrome, and excessive daytime sleepiness were the strongest predictors of fatigue in MS. And there is good news, though. According to Dr. Tiffany J. Braley, assistant professor of neurology at the Multiple Sclerosis and Sleep Disorder Centers at the University of Michigan, many of the problems that we have with sleep are treatable. She says appropriate sleep hygiene and amelioration of any precipitating causes is a first cardinal step. We need to have daily habits to help us to sleep. More on that later. And we need to address the possible causes of our poor sleep. One cause may be the medications that we're taking to combat fatigue during the day. She says that we may need to take them earlier in the day or change them if they're interfering with our sleep. This is something that we need to discuss with our doctors. Pain, spasms, and restless legs can also contribute to poor sleep. These can be treated with medications that also have a sedating effect to help us sleep better. They may also be treated with physical therapy and lifestyle changes. Dr. Braley says depression also has a bidirectional relationship with insomnia, and up to 50% of people with MS have depression. If we do, we should be sure to address both the depression and the insomnia. When it comes to addressing the causes of our sleep problems, she says behavioral strategies are favored over pharmacologic options. Behavioral strategies are those sleep hygiene habits that I mentioned earlier. Before we get to those, though, I want to highlight some of the benefits of good sleep. I read a book by Matthew Walker, a scientist and professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California, called Why We Sleep: Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams. It is a fascinating book, and I'll link it below if you'd like to check it out. He also did an amazing TED Talk called Sleep is Your Superpower, and I'll link that below too. He says when we sleep, we commit thoughts into memories, and we learn better when we get a good night's sleep. If we're trying to learn new things, we just can't if we don't get a good night's sleep. Our bodies also clean house when we sleep. The brain gets bathed in spinal fluid, and when we sleep, this cleans out the toxic proteins called beta amyloids. These toxic proteins can build up and lead to dementia and Alzheimer's disease, so it's important that we get good rest so our bodies can clean house. Lack of sleep can affect our immune systems too. When we don't get adequate sleep, our natural killer cells decrease. When we have just one night where we only get 4 to 5 hours of sleep, there's up to a 70% reduction of these natural killer cells. Natural killer cells, according to Matthew Walker, are sort of like secret service agents of our immune systems. They're really good at eliminating dangerous elements like infections and tumors. There is scientific evidence that natural killer cells have an immunoregulatory role that's important to maintain homeostatic immune responses in health, and that is compromised in MS. Having low natural killer cells can also increase our risk of a number of different cancers, including cancer of the bowel, prostate, and breast. Yikes. Having MS also increases risk for other comorbid conditions like cancer. Did you know that according to the World Health Organization, cancer rates are growing and that 1 in 5 people will develop cancer in their lifetimes? Yeah, that's a lot. So according to the studies, smart doctors and scientists, we really need to get good sleep for our health and well-being. I have to admit that it's an area that I struggle with sometimes. I tend to fall asleep okay, but I wake up multiple times a night. And when I wake up, my brain can turn on and it starts to get all these thoughts and ideas. And when that happens, it can take a long time to fall back to sleep. Does this happen to you? Let me know in the comments if it does and how you turn your brain off so you can go back to sleep. There are things that we can do to help with our sleep quality and quantity. Here are my tips to help with sleep. And what I really like about some of these tips is they're so easy and they don't take any willpower at all. Those are the kind of lifestyle changes that I really like, the easy ones. Number 1, go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. This is one that took me some time to be consistent with. I was particularly inconsistent on weekends and holidays. We'd get invited to parties or we'd stay up late on New Year's Eve. I now guard my sleep time much better. I'm in bed every night between 9 and 10, and I naturally wake up every morning around 6. Do you have a consistent bed and wake time? Let me know in the comments below. Number 2 is no screens in the bedroom. I know, this is a hard one, but when we scroll on our devices or watch TV, we're signaling our brains to be awake. If we keep our bedrooms just for sleep, our bodies will naturally start to relax and unwind when we get into bed. Number 3 is to keep our bedrooms cool. Our bodies need to drop our core temperature to fall asleep and stay asleep. Turning down the thermostat a few degrees at bedtime will help. The ideal room temperature for sleep is anywhere between 60 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Number 4 is to keep our rooms dark. Our eyes can detect light even when our eyes are closed, and you'd be amazed how much light sneaks into our bedrooms. Try this experiment tonight when you get into bed. Close your eyes for 5 to 10 minutes to allow them to adjust to the darkness, or what we perceive as darkness. Then open them and look for light sources in your room. You might be surprised how much light comes in through the shades, or from our clocks, or from our electronic devices. Room darkening shades can help. Removing clocks and covering the LED lights with black tape or removing the devices altogether from our rooms can help. Number 5, be careful with caffeine use. Caffeine can stay in our system for hours. According to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, caffeine's half-life is up to 5 hours. That means 5 hours after we drink a cup of coffee, half the caffeine is still in our systems. They recommend that we don't consume caffeine for at least 6 hours before bedtime. And number 6, don't eat too close to bedtime. When we eat too close to bedtime, it can signal our bodies to be awake, and our bodies are busy digesting when they should be sleeping. According to the Sleep Foundation, experts recommend eating up to 2 hours before bedtime to avoid negative effects. Researchers have found that eating high-calorie meals with large amounts of fat or carbohydrates less than an hour before bedtime can extend the time it takes to fall asleep, and eating right before bed can also make a person wake up in the middle of the night. Number 7, use techniques to fall back to sleep if you wake up at night. If you wake up multiple times a night, there are some things that may help you to fall back to sleep faster. I try to use my mindfulness breathing and meditation techniques to fall back to sleep. I've also started listening to audiobooks to help me fall back to sleep. I set the timer for 5 to 10 minutes, and that usually does the trick. It gives my brain something else to focus on. Guided meditations can help too. There's a lot of great apps out there that have some awesome guided meditations, and I'll leave links below to some of those and put them in the free download. This is one exception to the no screens in the bedroom tip. Use your phones just for listening. Number 8, get help with spasms and restless legs if they're interfering with your sleep. Not too long after my diagnosis, I was discussing the tightness that I feel in my left leg with my neurologist. It can often feel like I'm wearing a compression sock or my skin is too tight. This is a form of spasms, and it turns out it was interfering with my sleep. She prescribed baclofen, which is a muscle relaxer, and it helps me to sleep better. I take it right before bed, and it definitely helps me with that tight and sometimes restless leg feeling. Work with your doctors to see if medication might be right for you. I also try to stretch regularly to help reduce the spasms. In fact, there was just an article about the 5 best stretches to do for spasms in Multiple Sclerosis News today that I will link below. Do you have other tips that help you to sleep better? Please put them in the comments below. I love the community that we're building here and how we help each other. To get your free download of these tips, please see the link in the comments and also in the description below. To see more on diet and lifestyle changes that I've made that help me with my MS, watch this video next. And until next time, be well.